Welcome to the World Builders Anvil, episode 219. Today's topic, alternative sharing, not alternative facts. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the muck of Java and build. Welcome back. As always, my name is Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And with a Care Bear stare, I am Michael Miller. And as we all know, sharing is caring.
He really wanted that to be the title of the episode, but I couldn't quite go there. I used to actually have a social media thing at the bottom, which had sharing is caring with the arrow pointing down towards the social media buttons.
Nice.
I don't know if I still have that on the site. I'd have to go look, but I think I got rid of it. But it sort of made me think of that and how well it didn't work. So I guess people just didn't care. That's all right.
So, Jeff, I spend all this time creating all this cool stuff, and all I want to do is share it with everybody. What should I do? What am I to do? I'm at a loss here.
Okay, so there are many ways to deliver it. We're not talking about that. There's lots of things you could talk about. We did an episode on player's guides, and that's kind of maybe the types of stuff you'd be sharing with people. How do we share this stuff? Sort of like, how do we create an encyclopedia article that people want to read? Because that's kind of what you're doing. And some people do it at the beginning of their novels. They're called info dumps, and they don't work there, not anymore. And they also don't work on the web or in other ways. People just get bored with it, even if they read a little bit. Unless they're a super fan and they need to know everything, they're just not going to go in and learn that much about your world. But you want to share it for the people who are interested. But my theory is, if we do it in a more interesting way, maybe it will get people through a little bit more of the content, so that it'll make it a bit more compelling if you have some style to the delivery of it. And that's kind of what I wanted to go into, because really it does not work info dumps. And I could create actual encyclopedia articles about my world, put them online, and no one would find them. And that's actually one of the reasons I've not shared. If you go to gardool.com/world, or if you go to gardool.com and click on the world button, there's a page where I talk about my world a little bit, but more of it is on my experience world building. It doesn't get into the details much. And I've always been a bit hesitant to do it because I don't like info dumps. I don't want to create info dumps, but people keep asking me to create info dumps. So I'm kind of in a quandary here. So I overthink things. If you have listened to the first 218 episodes, you've probably picked it up by now.
If you haven't quite picked it up by now, basically the full blown subject here is how to share without oversharing, how to share in a new and interesting way, as opposed to the classic info dump.
Mm-hmm. Another reason I've always held back from sharing is, and Michael can attest to this, I've developed lots of stuff in this world. There are lots of races. There are lots of cultures. There are lots of things.
There are maps like you wouldn't believe.
And I started creating this world back in the early 90s. And there leads to part of my problem is most of the stuff has never been digitized. and Michael might also attest that I would have lots of notebooks with me, and I could reference to them.
Notebooks like you wouldn't believe.
I would take out maps, and I just don't want to put up like digital pictures of coffee-stained pages onto the internet either, even though I might share a few just for fun. But the thing is, so it's like when you have a big world and your story doesn't get into all of it, or it doesn't even where your frame of your story is, there's so much that gets missed, and that you want to kind of share with people. But, how do you do that in a way that's compelling? And obviously you can't go from a massive world that is all written down on pieces of paper into a website quickly, unless you can hire someone to type it all out for you. And now I could also, if I just started from scratch, Michael could probably also test to this. Sometimes it could get boring. And after 700 pages of getting to the part where actual races start to show up in the world, might get boring as well too. Some people might find some of the facts interesting, but in general, people, maybe in broad strokes would be interested in how it kind of got to where it is. But they don't care when the human race is an amiibo blob. Most people just don't want to know to that level.
Or maybe a relatively insignificant occurrence between one race and another X amount of hundreds of years ago. Mm-hmm. Like maybe its influence was super significant, but the actual occurrence was not that significant. Or maybe you haven't fully developed that story, but you want to share. Mm-hmm. One of the things that Jeff always goes back to is this show wanting to be a genesis point for a million fictional worlds. Mm-hmm. And everyone who world builds creates tons of information. But if it's going to get shared, it's got to be a little more concise. Mm-hmm. There are people that will spend time reading the Silmarillion and that will read your dictionaries of info dumps. There absolutely are. But there's a lot more that won't.
Yes. Or they'll start and go, oh, this isn't for me. Maybe the other stuff that they have isn't for me as well, too. So, how can I keep it kind of relevant and not boring? So creating many frames. Say, I don't want to just take the, why I like to call my world building Bible and put it online. Because one, there's way too many things that I don't want people to know in there at all ever. Unless I decide to reveal it as a story plot thing at some point. Because there's secret game master writer stuff that can't be shared. And of course, too, there's a risk when you share your world that you share out characters or you put this character was born in 1542 and died in 1562. And they go by your book and it's in 1651 and that character is the lead. You've maybe just given away that he dies either in the book or at the end of the book or directly thereafter. So it's like, how do you prevent the leaks from happening? Especially because there are probably some things that people can figure out if they start going through it. The people who go through it probably don't care, especially if you warn them up front, because they're more interested in the nitty-gritty details, and that's fine. But you have to prevent it from getting out to the people who don't. That's just my opinion. And, and the thing is, it might be neat to do, but it would be a lot of work. Even if it's just a small, world with a couple cultures and a couple dozen characters, it would take time to put it all online. And if no one really interacts with it, what is the ultimate reason for even doing it? Outside of just a venture of love. And if that's all it is, do it however you want to. But if it's more than that, maybe there's better ways to do it. And then, my last hesitation was I actually care more about, and Michael kind of reached to this, other people building more and better fantasy worlds than just sharing mine. Sharing mine is a cool thing, and I want to do it, but I'm more passionate about helping people make their worlds better and share their worlds. That's truly where my passion lies here. I love world building, and I don't mind sharing. People probably noticed that after the first 218 episodes as well, too. I yap a lot, but I ultimately care more about there. So when I'm doing it, I have to find a way to bring things together to make it work for me and what I'm doing. But I've been pestered enough by people to where I've thought about this, and I have to give a shout right away to Deborah Teramis Christian and Bruce Hurd. You might or might not know them. They are two old school RPG world builders. And they wrote a tremendous book called The Gazetteer Writer's Manual, Creating Traveling Guides to Fictional Worlds. And if you ever played old school D&D, they were actually books called Gazetteers. They were really cool ways to share countries and worlds. And so I bought this book because Bruce Hurd was fundamental in creating my first and probably most favorite Dungeons & Dragons world, Mysteria. And Deborah Teramis Christian, under her name, Deborah Christian, and Terry Randall, strangely enough, also released a bunch of Dungeons & Dragons stuff as well, too. And she did stuff, I believe, for other game companies as well. Star Wars and a few other old-school RPG games, as well as her own books. And so these are two really experienced. These are like the giants whose backs I've climbed upon for years. And so I bought the book, and they talked a lot about, creating, sort of these story-based, either story-based or history-based worlds, and how do you share them out in more compelling ways? And since I've read some of their stuff and they were compelling to me, I figure that's probably as close as I can get. However, I'm not going to do this all in a book. I do stuff in the web, so there's lots of different ways to deliver content, video, art, words, audio. What are different ways I can come to bring stuff to this? And maybe creating a frame for how to share it, its own fake story, which is what I'm going to do. Which I'll get into that in a second. Yep.
The travel guide idea is also is really cool. You take a look at Max Brooks' World War Z. Mm-hmm. It's not a travel guide, but it is a different way to present a world. Mm-hmm. Like, he presents a world in that book, but it's not, it's different.
Yeah, and there's always different ways of doing things. Same thing. It's like, think of Bram Stoker's Dracula, the actual book. It was a series of letters that kind of went back and forth between people, and so you get a letter, and it would help propel the action. There are different ways of doing things, and so I need it to be somewhat interesting, but I want to make it usable, as a gamer, and there's a couple interesting things about doing it that way. Is if I share stuff through context of game mechanics. Either game mechanics I create or I borrow, then it can show you the separation. I can say elves are smarter than humans, but what does that mean? What does that mean? And some people don't really care, and other people do care. And so if I use sort of like RPG type of stuff, for the people who want to know what the actual difference is, it's there. And then for people who want to game with it, it's there, and they can steal it. It'll be fun. So the last thing that I want to think about is, how can I use this in the context of the show to help other world builders, build their worlds better? Because a lot of people who listen to the show might steal some stuff from me for their games, or might be inspired by some of my stuff and want to see it. But most of you are your own world builders. So can I use this exercise to create stuff for you guys that you can use as well? Forms and that kind of stuff. Because I've had people ask me for forms before. Do you have a form on how to build cultures? Kind of. But there will be forms put together based on the template I use. So to get into some of the ways that I've come up with to solve it for myself, I think this is a puzzle that is slightly different for everyone. It's like different people are good at art. If you're an artist, pictures are would drive whatever you're doing. I'm going to do mine in a more multimedia format. There will be some videos. There will be some words. There will be some what I call art, which will be software generated stuff, which is the best I can do. And there will probably be some audio. If nothing else, audio for the videos. I don't know. I'm not sure on the audio yet. But there will definitely be a sort of mixture of stuff, but it will come through this frame. There's actually there's a character in my world called Grandfather Farnick, and Farrick. And he is a dragon who has existed, was the first dragon, claims to be the first being on the planet, and he was the last being on the planet, according to him. And so he actually has chronicled the history. From before history, he started tracking history. So before any of the cultures grew up, he was around starting to track this stuff. And he does all the way up through the space age when he finally decides to leave the planet. And so I think I'll be taking from his perspective of what his truth is. And so he has these things called the tablets. And so I'll be using these tablets as sort of the format for how I share things. And so he has tablets covering what he's found and what he wants to share in the world. And that way, it's limited in scope of what I'm going to share. It's what's important to him. It's what he considers the truth. It's not necessarily everything. And so there always leaves something in your mind of there could be more, or what is he not saying here? And the other thing, too, is my world, like many fantasy worlds, are broken down into ages. And since my world kind of evolves over time, I will probably have something where I explain the different ages of the world. And then within there, I'll probably start layering in cultures and characters. If you go back to the old mind map, where it's the basics, of how does magic work? How does, a brief overview of what's visual in the sky. Some maps showing how things came to be on Gardul will be kind of shared probably in a video form with those. But they'll be shared to help explain some of the cool stuff, right? So it's like, but do it in a little bit quicker fashion to where people don't have to read 200,000 words to get to what's important. And then I can focus on the stuff that I want to have stories around. And so get really heavy into focusing on those kind of cultures. And over time, I can kind of update as more stuff gets created and digitized and put up in there. So the thing is, I think is when I do it this way, it'll kind of give people first a brief overview, but then I can get to some really deep specifics quickly, which I think people will find more interesting to where, what's the write-up for the Bedrachum culture? What's some of the stuff about their alphabet? It's a developed language. What is that? What do I want to share with that? Maybe I'll put the font up there as well, too. People could steal the font and they can write Bedrachum. It's awesome. I write my wife notes and she looks at me like I'm insane. And if you have a spouse, she will do the same to you as well, or he.
I think the art thing is a really cool thing to mention. When you've got a world and you've got that dictionary of stuff, but you've got no visual, like it's all in your head. Mm-hmm. Like if you have a friend that's an artist, or even if you can commission someone to do some stuff, that the picture says 1,000 words is so true. Like one little visual, even if it's only the book cover or your website's homepage or just something, if you can really express to that artist what your world is like, them being able to give you some art that only exists to define your world goes a long way. Yeah.
And to be honest up front, the art for my world will be created through a character artist program, which is a very simple way for someone without art skills to sort of create the visuals of what people look like and stuff like that. But it's for people without art skills, so like me. But that way I can start putting up what do these people look like, to add a little bit more flavor, into there. There might be some hand-drawn crap of mine up there, but I doubt it because I'm really not very good. And I just have never spent the time to get good, so that's just not going to happen at this point in my life. But, so the one thing you have to think about, though, is what are your limitations? Do you get people you can work with? I don't like doing things where I can't compensate people. So I say if people want to share and say, hey, this is what I envision, I put it up, but I don't request stuff from people. I just don't do that. But later on, when I make billions of dollars, I'm sure I will invest money in artists to get stuff actually like art, like landscapes and like real art kind of mixed in. A lot of my art will be map or character based at the beginning, and it will be good. because I think it's good, but it's definitely artists are better.
My recommendation, if you are working on a budget, and most of us are, is to look into students. Look into people who are fledgling artists, and they're looking for projects, and they're looking to work on something at a professional level, but they're not they're not there yet, so they can't justify charging you what you'd pay a graphic designer to create.
Yeah, or I've met people from overseas who work for really reasonable prices as well too. So maybe places like Fiverr can get you certain types of artwork. For a lower price. Yep.
Fiverr is an excellent resource for art. What is it? Fiverr.com?
I think it's like 2 R's in Fiverr. But yeah, I'll, if I remember, I'll add a link into the show notes.
Yeah, definitely.
But the thing is, if I break it down, I think I like the idea of breaking it down by the ages. And when I talk about ages, it's like there are some of my own ages, like the age of rage. But a lot of them become more common, like, it's like the Iron Age, the Bronze Age. But that way, if people are interested in certain time periods, if I get into detail where a lot of it will be Iron Age stuff in the beginning, because I've reworked a lot of that at this point, at least for where I'm storytelling now. And some of the stuff leading up to it, which will be not as detailed, but it gives me what I need to build what I really need.
Do you have any desire to share what the Age of Rage is? Because it is such a great name, I need to know.
The Age of Rage is I call the first wave of history, and essentially there were 3 races at the time. There were dragons, giants, or what they're called later on, true giants, and this group called the Prima. They were the 3 races. The gods were on the planet, and the races worked for the gods. And a war started happening between the gods, which went to the world, and all of the races started fighting each other. And after a period of time, one of the races called the Prima turned against the gods. And they had acquired so much power because they had all of the aspects of all of the races, like think of like one creature that has all of the good things of elves and humans and dwarfs and all of those into one being. That was what the Prima was. And they went through technology from Stone Age to Space Age, interstellar travel within a few centuries because they were so brilliant. Plus, they could use magic. They were just and beautiful. They were just that person you don't want to work with. And and the thing is, they ended up going, you know what? We're done.
That must be how you feel all the time when we record, huh?
No. Not at all.
Brilliant and beautiful.
But what happens was when they said no, and they turned on the gods, but they had become so powerful in their numbers, they started fighting the gods. So one of the gods ends up, or the gods really start going after them, and the war gets massive, causes a massive cataclysm on Gardul, which causes a whole bunch of other problems. But it's this mythological age of where gods are on the world, gods are have their own followers, and they're fighting each other and causing massive chaos, and it's just a horrible period of time to live in. It's like every piece of mythology is like real. It's like Gilgamesh is just another day at the park. Another god ate some more children. Okay, that happened last week as well too, Bob.
They scorched half the continent again.
Yeah, that's right. But when it was over, the gods were banished, where they could not directly come to the planet anymore. The Prima were shattered. They developed into the other races that we know of like elves and halflings. Those all came out of the remnants of the Prima. So evolution started by a twist, we'll say. And then dragons and giants are still around, but they don't really interact much. They're sort of these things off in the distance that you really don't want to run into. But yeah, that's the Age of Rage. summed up very quickly there. But, it's like I'll have a little breakdown of what the different ages are. And then as I create content for areas, if it's a Iron Age civilization, it will go under that. And then if they survive to the Middle Ages, they'll get put in there. If they survive to the Renaissance type of period, they'll be listed there. And so, or if they disappear, they'll stop showing up. So people can go in and look at the type of material they're interested in. I've run stories from essentially the Iron Age all the way through the Space Age in my world. And so, like I said, I have a lot of crap developed for it because I like playing a lot of different things. I just like it. So, even though I really love fantasy, so that's typically why I'm in the Iron Age because I like it. I like it like that. Yeah, but it's all going to come from this one guy's perspective. And the great thing is one, when you don't have an omniscient storyteller, once again, what's really real? And is even telling the truth, right? Victors write the history. So is this what really happened, or is this just what got written down? So, it leaves some elements for me to even be wrong and go, oh, but actually he was wrong. I was right. That's just what Grandfather Farnick told you. So, but yeah. And, I'm going to use GURPS 4th edition rules, even though I should probably do 3rd edition because most of it is in 3rd edition.
I was just about to say I would like to footnote I prefer 3rd edition, but that's just me, Jeff.
But there's also the light version, so people don't have to go buy something. They can get the light version because most of it will be stat-based, so you can figure out what's the difference between IQ of 10 and IQ of 12. And so you can understand, they're not that different. IQ of 20 is amazing. IQ of 4 is really bad. But if you care, you can see the distance between and have a more in-depth knowledge. And if you're knowledgeable in another system and you want to convert it, you have a template to convert from. You'd probably have to play test it in a new system to get it to work, but there it is. And you love 4th edition because I told you do.
I like 3rd edition better.
Yes, you would. Okay. But really, I mean, the thing is, and I just want to reiterate this for your purposes too, is there will be some forms shared through here. So like if you're wondering what's kind of a good form, if you want to download something and be able to use it, you can. Because I don't want it to get leaked out for people who don't want any risk of figuring something out, it will be behind a closed membership site. It won't be pay; it will be free. But you'll have to log in to use it, and you can't share it out. Which in a way is sort of counterproductive because it would benefit me if people like it if they shared it out. But I'd rather ultimately, when my stories get shared out more, that people don't have stories ruined for them. So we'll be behind there. It might be too early to talk about a different thing I'm working on in a similar fashion to this, but it's probably too early to talk about that right now as well. But Derek, I'm talking about you.
Hey, Derek.
But yeah, this is something I've been thinking about for a long time, and I spent too much time thinking about it, and it's just time to start getting some stuff out there for people to go through. Over time, it will build up. People who belong to it will get an email when there are additions made to it. I usually have one day a week I can do world building stuff on, so I don't know how often stuff will. It will be somewhat polished when it goes up, though. So I believe there's something up there right now, but I can't say because I'm recording this in the past. So hopefully there will at least be a way for you to sign up to get into it, and a little something in there when this video goes live. So if you go to garduel.com/world now, you will see a way to get more information about the world itself. It'll be right there at the top. So I hope people like it. I hope it inspires you to build better fantasy worlds. If you game and you want to, take the stuff and use it in GURPS or work it out for your own world, feel free to do it. All I say is, this is my world. So it's anything that you do is not canon. It doesn't exist in my mind unless I say it's my world. So if you want to take it out take parts of it, manipulate it, change it, use it. I'm fine with that, but it's not canon to my world. It's because it's my world.
Speaking of
at this
game,
point,
it's been a little while since we've had any updates with Marky Marcus and the Divarian Jewels.
I didn't forget about that.
We might have to get to that.
I think we'll have to do that maybe next episode.
Next episode, I think, yeah.
The Marky Mark. And so for the World Builder task of the day.
Oh, I didn't even get down all the way down the list. Okay, here we go. You don't have a world building task on.
Oh, I didn't I didn't put it in the thing?
No,
I'll have to do both of them.
So you can do both of them.
The world building task for the day is create a plan of how you'd want to share your world. What are your hesitations? And how would you overcome them? And if you don't know, you can go to facebook.com/groups.
You see what I did there?
/Undercroft. Or just search for Undercroft, you'll find us. Or go to garduel.com/Undercroft. It'll redirect you to Facebook. And join the community. Feel free to ask questions. There are 3 questions you have to ask to get into the community. And if we don't know you and you don't answer those questions, we won't let you in. If I do know you, I'll let you win, though. But if I don't know you, you're out. I'll reject you after a while. So go ask questions there if you're stuck on things, or if you just want to bounce ideas off of people of, I want to share my player guides, or I want to make better player guides for my players. I want actual player guides, and I want to put it online to make it easy for them to get to, or just to print them out. There are different ways you can share this stuff. Mine's online because that's how I do. That's how I roll. And it's easier for more people to find it that way. And now for the real world task of the day, if you're interested in doing this at all, you have to go get the Gazetteer's Writer's Manual, Creating Traveling Guides to Fictional Worlds, in parentheses, the World Building Series, by Deborah and Bruce, 2 giants who've built more worlds than most of us will ever think of. So, and they deliver them in ways when you buy the old things that really, they're compelling if you're interested in fantasy. So, go ahead, go to the show notes. There's an affiliate link there, or if you go to garduel.com/Amazon and just go search for the Gazetteer's Writer's Manual, it'll pop up. You got anything else as we're going out the door here, Michael?
Other than just get how creative you are, so you don't have to apply that creativity solely for the creation of the world, but also in how you approach sharing it with others. Mm-hmm. Undoubtedly, there's some very cool ideas out there that Jeff and I haven't considered. Like, off the top of my head, like, old school zine style sharing, creating obviously a website. We love that idea. I don't know, art, and I don't mean like pictures, but maybe sculpture. I'm just shooting outside the box here.
All kinds of art, though. Yeah.
There's all kinds of different ways that you can create things that will put your world in people's mind. And that is the start. Getting interest. Getting people to say, hey, what is that? I'd like to know more about that.
If you make good faces that are culturally appropriate for your cultures, and I know this, I'm compelled. I think I have Greek pottery or knockoff stuff, not real stuff, but downstairs. I like that kind of stuff. So let me know if you end up making any pottery.
What?
I like the old pottery. So if someone makes up pottery for their fantasy world, they should let me know.
Oh,
I'm probably a buyer. All right, so we will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.garduel.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.